And on that note, talking about Old Spice, there seems to be brands like Old Spice that are so open to like, yeah, we'll do YouTube videos, we'll put ahead on how many upper bodies, they did. But then there are also, these brands that are sort of hesitant and don't really understand social media, don't really understand the value of having fans or friends, as it were. And I'm wondering, Dina, you spoke about brands that it's sort of the brands that have been in there, for a long time, and like this is what we've done, this is what works. What are your thoughts on changing that mind, or is it even smart to stick with what it used to be?
Well, I think that every brand needs to evolve in order to stay relevant and to reach their consumer, using different platforms, whether it is a great platform like Chictopia that allows you kind of reach influencers and shoppers, or if it's something a little more traditional, which is funny to say that Facebook or Twitter is now traditional, but I feel like there are traditional elements of the social media approach that we often take with brands. But some of the things one of the mistakes that I think a lot of brands make is that they think, oh, well, this is this cool new platform. What's Foursquare? What's Looped? What's Gowalla? Can we use this and do something fun? When they're not necessarily acknowledging that each platform definitely meets certain objectives. So Twitter is a great way to build relationships with influencers. It is also a great way to drive traffic to your site. Facebook traditionally has been great for managing customer service and for building CRM with your existing fans, for engaging them with great content. So each platform kind of meets a different objective, and so there's no one-size-fits-all approach for any brand.
Vanessa, I'm curious, as a blogger, as you look at brands, you work with brands as a blogger level. What do you see? Is it their presence in social media, or is it you see an ad and that's what's effective for you?
Effective for me,
as in clicking over and being interested in the brand.
Okay. Definitely. I mean, yeah. Like everyone has jumped onto this social media bandwagon. I was reading a statistic the other day about how 87% of companies now, across all industries, have a Twitter or a Facebook account. But I see a lot of really big brands on Twitter, and they kind of suck. They don't really know. Again, like the previous panel said, get someone that's the same age as your demographic, because I can absolutely see it when someone's writing these tweet updates and they're not using, they're not shortening their words right, or it's just, I don't know. I'm not trying to be an ageist, but you can definitely tell. So I feel like some people have done it really well, but I think that a lot of people just don't know how to use it yet. It's a free service. Twitter and Facebook are free to sign up for, but no one teaches you how to use it properly, especially if you're a brand and you're trying to gain more exposure.
Well, I will say I've had the luxury of looking at the core metrics data and Google Analytics data for some of the biggest brands you guys can imagine, particularly some of the biggest beauty brands through our work with the Estee Lauder companies. And it's really, really fascinating to see what the top referrers are to some of these huge beauty brands, their websites, and certainly a lot of social media sites are in the mix. Obviously something like Facebook, Twitter, some global social networks are driving a wide variety of traffic. And then, in the top 10, I'm also seeing in these examples top beauty blogs that are driving an enormous volume of traffic. And in addition to driving that traffic, we can then correlate it directly to sales and say, well, whomever is clicking through from, let's say, Temptalia is purchasing X amount on average. It's really pretty fascinating.
And Albert, I'd like to know from your perspective, what do you think is it important for a brand to still participate in something like Google AdWords, for example, and get, top search results, or do you think it's sort of both, using both, symbiotically, participating in social media as well as buying ads?
Yeah, sorry. In relation to search engine optimization specifically, I think everyone on the panel really mentioned, it's like the first thing that we, Google, actually ask our advertisers, whether they're big or small, as an ad sales team, is like, hey, what are your goals? Are you trying to drive conversion, are you trying to drive traffic, or are you trying to just get basic brand awareness, just get people to look at your ads, your website? Because understanding their goals first is the number one thing that we can do to optimize towards what the goal is. So an example, it would be if we have a Tiffany's versus a K Jewelers. Working with Tiffany's, they don't necessarily want to have an ad on the sponsored link section that says hey, Mother's Day is coming out 50% off of all rings and jewelry, that kind of thing, right? Whereas with the K Jewelers, there's another aspect of sales that they want to, they're approaching there. So I think even in terms of SEO, like brands versus, or, brands don't want to really tarnish their image when it comes to SEO. And just to touch on Old Spice again, since like, it was such a YouTube sensation. By the way, like the Isaiah Mustafa guy, like he has like the best job in the world. Ex-NFL guy, targets some guy.
And he has like movie deals too.
Yeah, he just signed up with NBC for some like TV show or something like that. Yeah, the two things I thought about, like just thinking about that example is like, it's keeping that conversation relevant and current. The great thing that Old Spice did was like they responded to not every single model, but they pick and choose people who like had really big presence like within social media. So they respond to like some celebrities, yeah, Bryce Hilton, that kind of thing, Ashton Kutcher, and they respond with these really funny videos. Did anyone see the one with Pandar by chance? Yeah. The voicemail? Yeah, so like this guy Pandar was like, hey, Old Spice guy, we want to like get a voicemail that we can use with our, our phones. And he like read out like, hello Pandar, like 1, 2, like the man you're trying to reach is like saving orphanages and whatnot. And this guy Pandar turned that into another website in response to like the Old Spice's video. And it just shows that the power of the conversation between like the brand and the person back and forth. This is like amazing. And I actually had the privilege to talk with like an agency guy that worked on the YouTube account with Old Spice. And he was just saying like, a lot of work went into convincing the agency that, hey, we can make these videos for free, it's really cheap, it's economical, and your videos can be passed around for like years and months or whatever. And even today, people are still passing videos around. And it doesn't cost money like you would with this SEO campaign where you have to pay for like click or that kind of stuff. So yeah, YouTube is an amazing social media site, but like some brands I think are still wary of tarnishing their image and using it cautiously. So.
Well, user-generated content is a really hard thing for a lot of fashion brands to digest, particularly luxury brands. Because when you think about luxury is about sharing your message and your point of view. It's not about listening, and it's not about adapting to the feedback that you're receiving, and that's basically what social media asks you to do. So that's why I say that there's no one-size-fits-all strategy. YouTube is an amazing platform, but at the same time, if I were working with a Tiffany company, I wouldn't necessarily be soliciting user-generated images or user-generated videos, because what if they don't meet kind of my brand creative standards, and it becomes a little bit of a challenge in that way.
And Albert, I want to go back to you. In terms of traffic, it's important that the traffic you drive is relevant, that this converts to either customers or fans, and that people stay with you. They may be looking for diamond engagement rings, but search number 1 could be a really challenging site. They'll never buy from it. So I want to get your opinion on if you have any insight on which traffic is more valuable, that which comes from search or that which comes from social media, in terms of brand advocacy, longevity, and converting into sales?
Yeah, I think sometimes the way I think about this is almost like a numbers game. Like if you just want people to come to your site that aren't necessarily the most relevant people that want to search for the thing, like that's one goal that you could have. Like a lot of agencies say, our client wants to get like 50 million views, like this or something like that. As Google will optimize towards that goal. But at the same time, we're going to say like maybe they might not convert and actually buy your tchotchke. But at the same time, with social media, it's like it's a lot more targeted users, and that's where the whole conversation game comes in. It's like, I use the example of sales. Like, would you sell like some guy like 5 cars in a year, and he's going to go through every single few months, or do you sell a guy like 2 cars per year, 10 years, or something? It's a weird example like that. But salespeople normally say like, we want these long-term, targeted, loyal users to stick around because they're the ones that are going to really push up brand ahead of the competition. Additionally, like I think there's a dichotomy between the traditional brick and mortar companies, like like a Home Depot, for instance. Like a lot of them, they still see social media as like a fun thing. Because I remember when like Facebook came out, NYU was like the 3rd school after Harvard or something like that. And for us, it's like a fun thing, check out girls kind of thing, whatever. But I think a lot of agencies still see it as like this fun, like way to create personal relationships, and it hasn't really gone to the next level of like this is actual corporate value, like we can really make impact their business.
And Vanessa, from a blogger's perspective, since you do work in both, do you find that one or the other returns more subscribers, and as your readers, gained followership, and you've got more fans on Facebook via your SEO or participation in social media?
I think, again, it's hard to see whether people are coming in for the SEO, but definitely for sure, like, just within the last few months, I've really tried to step up my game in social media, because I think for a long time, like a lot of people, just like, oh, Facebook, Twitter, like, I don't really get it and whatnot. But you have to remember there are over 500 million users now, right? And growing every single day. And it's like, why not tap into this? And again, it's a very direct field of people as well. I think I have been able to build more followers just by interacting more on Twitter and Facebook, and again, building those grassroots relationships with people. And those are the type of people that you want following you. You just don't want someone maybe finding you one day and coming once and never coming again. You want someone to like you. You want someone to retweet your stuff. You want someone to mention your stuff and think, like Liz mentioned, like, hey, like I kind of know Vanessa. We're like cyber friends, right? And I think that's really important.
And Dina, what are your thoughts from a brand? Is there more relevance when someone finds you via search, or translating your fans and followers into customers?
Again, I think that there's value in both, and it's funny because when Vanessa was answering that question, I saw a lot of relevance. She's speaking about her personal brand, but what she was saying makes sense for a lot of the brands that I work with as well. Ultimately, there's always going to be a balance. I think that you want to reach people where they are. So that's why a lot of our brands choose to engage on Facebook, and that's why we counsel them to have a great presence on Facebook and great content on Facebook that will get people excited. Because you have exactly 500 million plus users on that platform. You want to get them where they're spending a ton of time. I think that the average Facebook user spends something like an hour plus a day. It's a pretty astonishing number.
It's huge. Actually, more people spend time on Facebook than on search engines.
And Facebook is also driving quite a bit of traffic these days, which wasn't always the case. The same goes for Twitter. I think as these platforms are evolving, they're becoming more viable ways to drive substantial traffic, and to drive traffic that is probably more likely to convert. It's hard for me to correlate that directly, but I think if someone is on, Tiffany is not a client of mine, but if someone is on the Tiffany & Company page, they've already raised their hand and said, hey, I'm a fan of Tiffany, I love this brand. So when they're clicking through, they're that much more inclined to make a purchase to stay on site.